Hello everyone, and welcome to part 2 of our Best Books of 2020 podcast. And I'm joined once again by Vikki Reilly. Hello, Vikki.
Hello.
And we, in the last podcast, we did books 1 to 6. So if my maths is correct, we're going to go to book number 7. What is the 7th book on your list?
Well, seeing as you were talking about crime in the last, that was your last book in the first podcast, I thought, why don't we carry that on? So my next choice is the McCleary Prize-winning Pine by Francine Toon.
You know, every year there's a book that you think, I mean to read that, and that's mine. It's been sitting on my to-be-read pile for far too long. So I'm interested to hear what you think about it.
Well, again, it was another book that I listened to rather than read, and it was fairly recently as well. It's for a crime book. It's a very different kind of crime book,
right?
In the fact that, I mean, there is a crime in it, but it's not really about the crime. And so it doesn't feel like it is a crime book in a weird sort of way. Like I've decided that what it is Highland Gothic. If we can have Southern Gothic, we can have Highland Gothic. And I think that's kind of what Pine is. So really, it's about this family, this young. It's told mainly through the eyes of a young girl, and her mother disappeared years. Well, it's not clear. She left. She's gone. It's not clear whether she disappeared, she left, whatever, because her dad just does not talk about it. It's like one of those family secret things that's just bubbling there in the past. And so she lives quite uncomfortably with her dad, who maybe has himself has a little bit of an issue with drink, has a definite issue with keeping his feelings and emotions locked up and being secretive, and so it's about the world through her eyes, and the village that she lives in, and so it's just really, it's kind of like there's a sort of Twin Peaksian element to it, but it's really about it's really atmospheric, and it's really about how everybody sort of interacts with people. There's an element of the supernatural to it as well, because characters start to they feel like they're seeing this woman who might or might not be the mum. And then later on in the book, a young girl who babysits for the main character, whose name I've completely forgotten, and my lockdown memory has kicked in and I've completely forgotten the main character's name. She disappears, and she disappears just as she's been in the car with the young girl's dad as well. So there's always an element throughout that there's something not quite right with the dad, and there's something not quite right with the community as well. And so we just follow the community as it comes to tries to find this young girl who's gone missing, and deals with their own sort of strange struggles with the landscape around them and their own family dynamics. It's not your typical crime book at all, and I've found that quite a lot with. I haven't actually read a lot of crime this year in comparison to other years, but of the crime that I have read or listened to this year, there has been that strong theme of gothic and supernatural quality to it. I found it very much reminded me of Helen Sedgwick's first crime book, When the Dead Come Calling. Yeah, there you go.
Absolutely.
And C.J. Cook's The Nesting as well, which is very similar in that there's family secrets, and it feels like that the area itself is there's like a spirit to the area that's affecting the community. So I'm wondering if this is like this, maybe this Highland Gothic, this like crime gothic is where we're all heading at the moment.
Well, I think this would be a good time to take a slight detour and talk about crime fiction this year, because I agree with you. It's been an incredible year, very varied year. Very quickly, you mentioned Helen Sedgwick's When the Dead Come Calling, which I think is set in north of England. But as you say, it's got that real weird, is the land kind of affecting people? What's going on? And there's a follow-up to come, I'm fairly sure. I think that's right. Which I cannot wait for.
Hopefully it's a series.
Yeah, Helen is a great writer anyway, but this, I just loved this, absolutely devoured it. Great characters, but really eerie sense of...
Eerie, that's exactly the right word.
It felt like something that you might have appeared on telly in the 70s with kids that was, like they were disappearing, a really odd thing, but...
You could hear the sort of spooky wind chimes and things like that in the background while you were reading it.
I'm going to quickly mention some other crime books that came out last year, which were fantastic. Talking of series, a series that goes from strength to strength is Alan Parks, and this was Bobby March Will Live Forever. So he's done his January and February. This is March. April, I believe, is coming very soon.
Yeah.
It'll go on the way. I don't want to go into too much detail because, we would be here all night. But if you like...
I think we're going to be, Al. It's all right.
If you like a grim and gritty Glaswegian crime novels set in the 70s, then you will adore the whole lot of those books. They're fantastic.
Yeah, I like the little rock and roll element to Bobby March as well. It just hinted at that sort of Rolling Stones, Graham Parsons kind of relation.
Right. It was a guitar player who comes to an end, who had been touted as the best guitar player, who never quite made it, and could have been a contender if it wasn't for his love of drink and drugs, and comes to an untimely death in Central Station, of course, in Central Station. Someone else who I think is going from strength to strength and has moved to Arenda Books, seem to have done that, is Doug Johnson, who had two came out this year, A Dark Matter and The Big Chill, and it's the Skelf family, the brilliantly named Skelf family, who are three generations of women who are, it sounds crazy when I say it out loud, but they run a cemetery and they're also detectives and solve crimes and do all that kind of thing. But it really works. Regular people know how much I love Doug's writing, but I think these are the best things he's ever done. I really do.
I've got The Big Chill over on my couch there. I really want to read these ones. I've not got around to it yet because I remember him, but maybe it was last year or the year before, saying that he was a writer in residence at a funeral home. And this is probably how and where these books have come from. And I just thought, how amazing is that, being a writer in residence at a funeral home? What does that entail? And what did he find out? I'm so curious about that.
Well, read the books, because then I'll tell you. And if half the things are right, then it's some business to be in. Alan Spence, he was involved in the funeral business, I seem to remember. As well. Other books which are part of fantastic series which continue, Claire McCleary's Payback, which is the latest in the Wilma and Big Maggie series of books.
Again, that came out in March time, and so you just think that it didn't get the attention that it deserved because we were all worried about COVID instead.
I would hope by this point that if you have read one of Claire's books, you won't want to stop there and you want to read them all. Similarly with Olga Vochas and Miss Blaine's Prefect and the Vampire Menace, which you could say is gothic in its own way, but it's just
comedy gothic.
It's brilliant. I love Olga's books. We had a podcast with Olga as well, and fantastic. And Douglas Skelton continues to go strong, one of our favourites, and it's the Rebecca Connolly thrillers, and that is in the north.
Yes. See, I've not read The Blood Is Still, but I've read Thunder Bay. And again, there was that sort of element of the landscape infecting the community a little bit. Does that happen in the second one as well?
It's more city-based, as in it's more... actually, now that you say that, there is the Moors of Culloden, and that play a big part in it. And you know what might have gone on there, and what might still go on there. Quite, I would say that it felt quite Ian. Where is he? Felt quite Ian Banks like. The Blood is Still Latin. That's a high compliment. I really mean. So yeah, that was kind of my year in crime. But a very good one. There were other books as well. Morgan Cry's Costa del Crime thriller was a good one to read, and there were others too, but they were my highlights, I would suggest.
But what is your next choice, though?
My next choice is perhaps the breakthrough writer for this year, and it's Graham Armstrong and the Young Team.
That's the third debut you've talked about today.
Well, I mean, how great is that? And yeah, so again, another podcast guest. If I like your book, basically, I'll ask you to come and talk to me. That's how it works. But it's an astonishing book. It really is. And I would say this is a book for me that gets the language and the voice right from the opening sentence and carries it through. It's beautifully written. Writing dialect is very difficult. Very difficult to get right, and he makes it feel effortless. It's very violent. It's basically set on his own kind of past. He would tell you that in Airdrie and that area, running with the young teams, the gangs, and the difficulty in getting out of there. There's a lot of drink. There's a lot of drugs. There's quite a bit of happy hardcore. And you know, dancing as well. They're some of the best scenes, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely, totally. I knew you would pick this, so that's why I didn't pick this.
Yeah, I have to. It's a fantastic debut, and you know, you were saying earlier on, I can't wait to see what they do next. Talking about Shuggy Bain and Douglas Stewart. Well, I cannot wait to see what Graham Armstrong does.
Yeah, well, that was one of my favourite of your podcasts this year. He was such a brilliant guest. Yeah. I loved the way he talked about how he wrote the book, and yeah, it was so brilliantly done, so brilliantly done.
And if anyone wanted to hear, I mean, be inspired really about sticking at it as a writer, in fact, both Douglas Stewart and Graham Armstrong talk about how keeping at it and sticking at it, and don't let this. I mean, Graham says there was no plan B. This is what I was going to do. That was it. And yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed the podcast. It was just inspired by this fantastic book. So that's The Young Team by Graham Armstrong, which came out on Picador.
Yeah, it's very visceral, very. Oh, yeah. It was, yeah. The cycle of violence that continues all through it, but saying that it's very violent and very dark, and it is, but there is a lot of humor in it too. It's not unremittingly dark. Like as you say, the rave scenes are brilliant. They're so well done, and just the camaraderie between the young team as well. It really shows how getting involved in gangs and being part of that world would be so attractive to young guys who probably don't see that much of a different kind of future for themselves. But you get that sense of being in a gang, being amongst pals, and you're all sort of fighting and living for each other. Really loved it as well.
And going back to the book we talked about last time, Blessed Assurance by Stuart Ennis, it does capture those kind of fears and hopes and dangers of youth. You know, you join the wrong gang, or you make a wrong turn in the street, or you know, you miss your footing doing something stupid, and it likewise captures all of that stuff. Very recognizable, even if you weren't involved as directly as Graham was.
Oh yeah, it took me back to my school days completely. Absolutely. Just even though I wasn't in a gang, but it just hearing that chat going on in the playground, and yeah, it was so recognizable. Okay, now we're into your eighth choice, I believe. Eighth choice. What have I got? What have I not spoken? Oh yes. I'm going to talk about an author right now rather than a book, because I want to celebrate somebody who had a very creative and lovely lockdown, despite not bringing out anything new. And that person is David Ross,
Okay.
who just seems to know how to do lockdown right.
Well, I mean,
I
we
don't
can
know if
also
this is.
talk about his latest one because I've read it. So we
Oh,
can,
have you read it? See, I've got it. Well, wait,
but it doesn't come out to next month, but we can maybe have a wee chat about. Yes, fantastic. So, what was it about David's lockdown that really appealed to you so much?
Well, I mean, when lockdown first happened, there was, I mean, I was part of it working in the publishing industry, that very sort of real sense as to how do we talk about books? What do we do when everything's shut and oh my God, and all we can do is be online and and I don't know if he had planned this with Into Creative before lockdown or whatever, but he had a very, very simple but effective thing of hosting like small a read along of one of his books, not even his latest book. It was his Last Day of Disco's his first book.
No.
Or no.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting confused myself. Carry on, I'll check.
I think was I think
Last Days of Disco, wasn't it? Yeah, that's
yeah.
of course it was. Last Days of Disco was his first book.
So I mean, he just did this really simple thing where he read for about he did about, what was it, maybe 30, 40 episodes where he read his book in a 1 hour from start to finish. But he did it in such a way. He worked with Into Creative. I mean, maybe you know them more than I do.
Stephen Cameron is basically Into Creative and does some great stuff. I mean, they've been doing some amazing stuff, putting out radio shows, doing spoken reviews, doing the stuff with David, and even the theatre production as well.
Yeah. And so like they melded just David sitting in his house reading the book, but they melded it with like music and visuals so that it made it seem like more of an event. And you could watch, and he posted a new episode every day for a wee while, but they're all still on YouTube if you want to watch them. But there were particular chapters where he did a little something different, and you were part of it too. I think was it chapter 19, Dispatches?
Well, he asked people to read the letters from the brother being sent back home. The brother's in the Falklands, going out to the Falklands.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the letters get more serious as they go along. And David had various people and who he knew to read out the letters, which I think worked very, very well.
Oh, it was such an emotional episode. It was really, really good. And I mean, even was it Teresa Talbot that was the last one, and she ended up getting quite emotional while she was doing the reading. And it was just, I just thought it was such a brilliantly simple way to do your book in a sort of lockdown online way. And then that wasn't even the only thing that he did. He ended up, he was doing an adaptation of one of his other books, The Miraculous Vespas.
That was the one I thought was first, but of course that's the second one of the trilogy.
That second one. And so there was an adaptation of it for theatre, and I think was it originally going to be performed in a proper theatre in a proper way?
Oh, I can't remember. I guess it probably was.
Yeah, but instead what they did was adapted it.
Yeah.
They adapted it into a theatrical experience, but through Zoom, and it was so well done. It was so brilliant to watch. I mean, they really adapted it. They really shoved it down to its essence, but it was so good. The performances were amazing. The story was amazing, and I just thought, what a great way to rethink how we do books and how we do events and how we do these things when circumstances like lockdown come about. And I have no doubt that if anything else was to befall the world, he would probably be right there thinking of a different way to do it.
David, he never panics, and he will always come up with something different and a new way of doing it. And he started writing in the first place. He started posting little things on Twitter, and then that got collected. And, you know, he just is one of these people that he never sees a problem as something that can't be solved. So he'll say, oh, well, how can we do this? And that's, as you say, is lovely in that he involves other people in that. And as does Stephen Cameron, who does Into Creative. So it was a really good partnership that way, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to reading his new one, Danny Garvey,
Yeah, there's
which is
only
out in
one Danny
January.
Garvey, which is, it's a brilliant book, absolutely brilliant. It's more serious than previous ones.
Oh,
If
right,
you're looking
okay.
for the kind of laugh out loud, funny nature of David's books previously, there's still lots of funny lines in it. You know, that's the way he writes. But yeah, excuse me, it's much more serious, but kind of almost all the better for it. It's very emotional again. I won't give away too much about it, but when we're talking next year, I'm sure we'll be talking about Danny Garvey, no doubt. Okay, well, that wouldn't be a best of roundup of recent years if I didn't talk about David Keenan.
Ah!
The Cult of David Keenan. Extabeth is his latest. It only came out fairly recently, yeah. And I'm going to have to take a wee drink here.
See, again, this is a book that I knew that you would pick, so I didn't pick it, but it would totally have been in my top 10.
I wrote a review of it for Snack Magazine, and the first line was, I don't know what I expected, but I didn't expect this. And I think that kind of sums it up. You never second guess David Keenan. Of course you can't. We should know that by now. But this is a quite astonishing undertaking. It's almost, it's not stream of consciousness. It's not like that at all. But he says himself, I want to take the writer out of the book or whatever. And, you know, it's mainly set in Russia, but then there's bits in St. Andrews. It's sex and jazz and golf. It's kind of the
Golf! I mean, golf!
But one of the most amazing scenes to me is his depiction of the golf swing of this golfer. It's absolutely beautiful. I mean, it almost brought me to tears. And it's describing a golf swing, for goodness sake. But I think David Keenan's proven himself to be one of the most talented writers, full stop. I mean, I just think he is quite astonishing. He's extreme in many ways, but never for the sake of it. I never get the feeling it's for the sake of it. It reminds me of reading Kathy Acker or something when I was younger, which again was quite extreme, but you understood what there was a reason for it, and that's what I get with David Keenan.
Yeah.
It's like, have you read it?
Yeah. I loved it. I read it all in one sitting, which I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
I was kind of reading it and I was like, I was going through it so fast and I was like, oh, I'm going through it too fast. I'm probably not getting it all. But then I couldn't help but finish it. No, it's like, it's sort of, it's very dreamlike.
Exactly.
So even though it's not stream of consciousness, it doesn't feel real, but it does feel real.
It's exactly that way that you're saying it, how you read it in one go. You didn't really want to, but you almost can't help yourself. As if you're being drawn into the next sentence and into the next bit. And it moves along at a pace which is, you end up slightly in a dream.
Because it stayed with me for days.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just, it's because the sentences all the sentences make sense.
Yeah.
As sentences in a way that some stream of consciousness books don't. But at the same time, it's got that sort of, I mean, I don't know if you do, but I dream very vividly as well. I have a whole dream world which is recognizable, and when I'm in it, I know where everything else is in relation to that, and so it feels both very real but totally unreal as well. And that's how I felt reading this book.
I think that's kind of similar to maybe what he is doing, creating a fictional world where people come and go, and if they arrive, he's surprised to see them, or he's delighted to see them because he didn't expect that they would turn up. I mean, he's kind of mentioned that kind of thing to me previously. It's a shame that it's so short in a way, because you're through it and you go, oh, I could have done with more of that. I could have done with a lot more of that. Apparently his next book is going to be massive. I hear from his publisher that is the case, you know, right. But I can't wait for it. And yeah, I just can't imagine him ever disappointing me as a writer. And if he did, he would do it in a very interesting way.
Yeah, because even for such a slim book, there's it packs a lot in. Like if we like we've both probably just read it once now, but if you, I think it'll be a book that rewards with rereading each time.
Definitely.
I think you'll probably get something new. And I mean, we've not even talked about just the exuberance. I don't know how he manages to create energy on a page.
There is energy. I mean, this is all gonna sound like, you know, ravings of mad people.
I know.
It's like the book vibrates in your hand. There's so much kind of packed into it. You know, it's a kind of ticking time bomb of a book, like a living, breathing thing almost. And you know, you might think, "What are you talking about, Braidwood?" But if you read my review, that's the kind of stuff that you get into. It's like it's different for me. It's different from anyone else I can think of in the way that he writes.
Yeah, definitely. And what was I going to say? What was my train of thought? And just what I really is so unself-conscious as well. You just
It's an unself-conscious stream of conscious, which I really. But I think you're right.
I like the fact it's like when I mean unself-conscious, I mean unafraid.
Yeah.
There's a fearlessness to it that I really appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well done.
Absolutely. Well done, David Keenan. What a man he is. Okay, we're on to your ninth choice, I believe.
Okay, I'm going to go off into a completely different tangent and talk about nature writing.
Well, a bit like Scottish sci-fi and Highland Gothic, nature writing is really having a moment, I think.
Yeah, well, it's just, see, this is the thing though. Scottish nature writing has been having a moment for a long time.
Probably has.
But it's just people haven't really been talking about it. Which is straight, like everybody bangs on about, you know, Tartan Noir. Scotland is famous for its crime writers, when really the nature writers have been there for a long time too, just doing it in a really inspirational kind of way. So the book that sort of brings this to a head for me in 2020 is Antlers of Water, which is a nature writing anthology edited by Kathleen Jamie. And really, she had what she's done is she's had essays written by all the sort of the Scottish writers from the last few years who have been the ones at the forefront of bringing Scottish nature writing to a bigger audience. Because nature writing has been, for maybe in the last, I don't know, maybe 5 years, has had a particular renaissance in a way that it didn't used to have. Like nature writing probably used to be seen as like this worthy, quite academic, quite dry subject where folk just talk about, you know, the chlorophyll in leaves or something like that. I have no idea. Whereas now nature writing, it's about the personal relationships that we have with the landscape around us, whether urban or rural or and animals and all that kind of thing. And that's what this anthology does brilliantly.
Do you think that's partly down to the rediscovery and the celebration of Nan Shepherd in the last 10 years? You know,
could be, yeah. Because
that's
I mean,
exactly what she does, I think, or she did, was, you know, the relationship, the physical, the psychological relationship between the land and the individual,
and the sexual relationship as well. Like just it because what the nature writing seems to be doing now is what it's about. I mean, I think Kathleen Jamie said this in the Damien Barr show. Like it's about noticing. It's about feeling the moment that you're in with nature around you. And that's what The Living Mountain is completely about. I mean, I can't believe there can't be very many people in this world that haven't read The Living Mountain now.
Well, let's hope so. And
if they haven't, then they should.
Yeah, but you're right. There's been a lot of people. I mean, I kind of often thought of it mostly with poets like Jim Crummy and folk like that, but it does seem that there's been more essays and actual bits of kind of fiction and non-fiction.
Because it is like poetry, the nature writing that's coming out. That it is about noticing. It is about moments. It is about detail, and then bringing that out into the larger sense of, you know, our personal relationship to the landscape, but also then, you know, society's relationship with the landscape, and which, you know, considering we've been talking about Martin McInnes's book and Vikki Jarrett's book is something that's it's completely vital at the moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The environmental aspect of it's a huge thing, I think, and increasingly, I think that's why people are turning to writing nature writing to try and understand it better.
I mean, it's not a genre that I would naturally go towards, being a bit of a city gal. I can't name any tree for you, but when I do sit down and read nature writing, I really, really love it, because it just, maybe it is that sort of relationship with the senses that's apparent in nature writing.
Well, a book which isn't exactly nature writing, but certainly has similar kind of themes in a way, is Peter Ross's A Tomb with a View. Just absolutely adore this book. If you don't know about it, it's basically Peter took to walking around his kind of local cemetery and then discovered that there were stories and mysteries on the stones or behind the stones that were there, and decided in a very Peter Ross way that, I'm going to expand this out, and eventually went all around the UK and Ireland to various cemeteries to do just that, to speak to the people who kind of congregate there, who find a home there, for want of a better word, to discover stories about those buried there, the history of the places themselves, why some people find comfort in places like that. Again, it's all about the individuals. It's all about the people. It's not just a guide to my favorite graveyards. It's so much more than that. I think Peter Ross is one of my favorite writers. I just love what he writes. I think this is his best book. Because there's the focus that it has. Previously, there were kind of collections of essays that he'd written for newspapers or things like that, and they're excellent. But to have this focus, and to have it allowed his ability to empathize with people and ask the right questions, and more importantly, listen properly to the answers, which he does better than I think anyone else. Because often when people are in graveyards or even thinking about them, they're very, very vulnerable. And there are very moving parts in this. There are also very funny parts in it, selling Karl Marx scone cutters down in Highgate Cemetery and things like that. And him going to the guy, do you think Karl Marx would have approved of this? Oh, yes. But it's such a great book. And if you don't know Peter Ross's writing, then I would start with this, and you'll want to read everything else that he's done. I just love his writing.
Again, like what I was saying about Edwin Morgan earlier, is that he seems to be somebody that likes people.
Oh, very much so.
That's the same with Peter Ross. Like there's such a lack of judgment in his writing, whether it's, when he's interviewing celebrities or famous people or like ordinary people. I can't wait to read that book. That is definitely on my to-do list. And it also makes me want to go and visit graveyards as well. I mean, I used to play in graveyards a lot when I was wee, because I had one right beside my house. We even built a tree house in a graveyard. So I don't know if you're really allowed to do that, but we
it depends where you got the wood from, to be perfectly honest.
It even had a fireman's, like we because where we lived, it was still getting built, and so we got one of those scaffolding poles as well, so that we had like a sort of fireman's pole if you wanted to get down the tree quicker.
That definitely doesn't sound right. But in some ways, it's quite a reflective. Well, not in many ways, it's a reflective book. But something I hadn't considered is that a lot of the city cemeteries that were built in Victorian times are either full or getting full, and and it's almost about something that's certainly no longer in its prime. But it's such a wonderful book, and as you say, such a warm and human book. Okay, we're getting to your 10th choice. Sorry, Vikki.
We're getting near the end, man. So my final choice is, I don't have a copy of it again because I've lent it to my mum. So it's Scabby Queen by Kirsten Innes.
So when we were deciding what books to talk about, we kind of went, yeah, it's okay, you can have that one and you can have that one. But this is the one that we're almost fought over to have in our list because we both absolutely love it. And
I won.
of course, he threatened me.
I did. I threatened you with an arm wrestle, which I don't know how we would do over Zoom.
A virtual arm wrestle. Right. So why do you love the fantastic Scabby Queen so much?
Well, I think again, when I was saying how Shuggy Bane was my favourite book of the year, I mean, it just pipped Scabby Queen to the post. Like, I just absolutely love Scab. Again, like Regina Porter's The Travellers, it's just the kind of book that I love. Like, I mean, I love all kinds of books, but big, baggy, multi-voice books, just, I don't know why, but those are the books that just, when I start reading them, it's just like getting into a warm bath or something like that. It's just like, oh, this is it, this is the stuff. And Scabby Queen is absolutely that kind of book. So I mean, even though it's not written in first person, but you do get a sense of everybody's character and everybody's individual self in it. So it's a book, if you don't know, it starts off with the suicide of a woman called Cleo Campbell, who was a bit of a one-hit wonder in the 90s with a politically inspired pop song called Rise Up. And so the rest of the book is really different people who she interacted with throughout her life and their experience of having Cleo Campbell in their life. And it starts, I mean, it really goes from sort of the late 70s all the way to the present day, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you get to know her family, you get to know various men that she was involved with, you get to know she was a very politically active person, so all the various people that were involved with her political activism, and all these sort of uh, histories bind together to give you, or not give you, a picture of who Cleo Campbell is or was. And it's just done so superbly. So again, such energy in it as well. It's a book where the voices really bounce off the page, and you feel like chatting to them.
Yeah, there's lots of different points of view, lots of different people's stories, and to have multiple characters and to make them all stand out in that way is incredible, really. And then you've got this enigmatic character at the center of it, who you can understand kind of delights and then disappoints and all the things that you start to understand the reasons behind, because as you say, you get the family history and the fallouts, and then you get to see how she was taken advantage of, but then in turn perhaps she took advantage of others. Very human and believable characters. And I'm talking about a page turner.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not a small book, but I pretty much sat up and read that all in one go as well, because you just wanted to know more. Kirsten Innes, we know, is a fantastic writer, but this is something else, I think.
Yeah. Like, because it's so energetic, and because like you do feel like you're just sitting in a room with all these different people, sometimes you might be forgiven for thinking that you miss all the ideas in it, and all the sort of, and the political points that Kirsten Innes is trying to make, and about the relationship between men and women, and the patriarchy and politics and class and family, and where strength comes from, and the compromises that you make throughout your life, and what it means to be a happy person. And like, but it's full of all those kinds of ideas, and full of all those observations, but because it just has such energy and zips along, you just kind of receive these ideas without even knowing that you're receiving them.
But it's never heavy-handed. You never feel
not at all
hit around the head with political points or anything like that. You just don't, because that's what life's like. People's politics are in themselves, in their being, their actions, and a lot of it is about the actions and reactions to Cleo, I think.
Yeah, and so many moments just break your heart. And yeah, it's another one that is very, visceral in its emotional connection with you as a reader as well.
Well, my final book is a little small one, but packed full of interest. It's Laura Waddell's Exit, which came out on Bloomsbury. It's part of their object lessons. I say, again, it came out of nowhere, really. I had no idea that she had written it, and got it through the post, and it's just so smart. It takes the idea of exit, whatever that might be, and looks at it from just every angle, very different angles. I said when I reviewed it that it's the only book I've ever read that's got the cultural policy of the Nazis and Sesame Street in the same book. And you know, it's not just about the exit sign as you might think about looking at that. It's just about all different. It's philosophical, it's political, it's social questions. It's the final chapters, which are little, almost kind of haikus. It's just one of the best bits of writing I've read all year. And I have often, as you can see with these little notes, been going back into it and reading it again and again. Because there's always something new to take out of it. It's kind of, I think last year we talked, the book, The Political Constitution Street.
All right,
And it's got a similar feel to that, in that it's almost got a practical element that you could read it like the Constitution of Human Rights, and you could see what's right and what's wrong and what maybe you could do differently. And I think that's what Exit has as well. You can read it and you could some people dismiss some of it, you could learn from some of it, you could think about what you mean. There's allusions to exits in literature and in films and all of that kind of stuff. For one word, exit, she packs a whole load of ideas into it. It's Laura Waddell.
It's such a brilliant idea for a series of books to just take a concept and run with it in any way that you can. You can just sort of go on a little investigative journey, and it kind of reminds you of why Montaigne decided to write, like to sort of invent the essay form.
Yeah, it's a great reminder of what essays can do and should do. And I think sometimes that, as you say, that does get forgotten a little bit, but they should make you think, they should challenge you, and they should make you look at the world in a different way. And that's what Exit does. It did for me anyway. Well, we have done 10 books each, and it's only taken almost 2 podcasts worth to do it. I did say before we start that we could have some any other business. So is there something else that you particularly want to discuss?
Well, I mean, there are books that are still from this year that I've not managed to get round to yet. And so I just want to give them a little shout out, just in case folk are watching this before Christmas and, you know, they're wanting some recommendations. So what a very lovely book that came out this year is Lachlan Gowdie's The Story of Scottish Art.
Another podcast guest, I have to say, Story of
Yes,
Scottish
that's
Art.
right. Yeah,
This is a beautiful book.
It's so good, and I can't wait to get stuck into it, because, you know, like if I was a gazillionaire, I would probably do lots of degrees. I would probably just go back to uni and just do degree after degree after degree. And I think one of them would be art history, just because, just to give you that space to really, really just delve deep into the story of how history's progressed through the years. And this book just does that for Scotland. And the interesting thing is, like, most people don't really think of Scotland as the center of where art happens, really. It's like Paris and Venice and all these kinds of things. And so it's just brilliant to see a book which will put Scottish painting and Scottish art in those contexts and say, actually, yeah, we were doing this art at this time and influenced by that. And yeah, I can't wait to get stuck into that in the Christmas holidays.
It's a fabulous book. It is one that I don't think you would sit and read cover to cover. You might if you were really into your art, but if you want a book to just sit either at the side of your bed or the side of your chair and just, you know, read a bit at a time. So informative. Lachlan clearly knows his stuff inside out. I think we know that from his television work. And yeah, it's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's really gorgeous, really gorgeous. And the other sort of Christmas project that I have is that even though I have so this year Ali Smith finished her quartet, her seasonal quartet, and I have read Autumn and Winter, but I've decided that now all 4 of them are out, I'm going to read all 4 of them in a oneer, and sort of have that sort of more that connected aspect to reading them all in that way, because you know when you read them as they come out, you've read like a squillion books in between, so you sort of lose the connection. So that's what I've decided, that I'm going to read the quartet as a whole and see where that takes me as well.
So we'll see you in the new year then, basically. I wanted to make a mention of a book which I am reading at the moment, but I have not quite finished. But I have a feeling that if I had finished it, it could have made my 10. And it's Andrew O'Hagan's Mayflower.
Yeah, I've got that one.
Well, it's absolutely a perfect for myself, because Andrew, I think, is about the same age as me. Maybe might be a bit younger.
A bit older.
Well, I don't know. But anyway, this would be the friendships formed in the early 80s, going to see bands. There's a whole scene where they go to see the shop assistants in Manchester. I mean, that was a dream gig to me. And then it's about the friendships formed in the formative years, and then latterly, well, I won't give anything away, but how that friendship can be a strength, but also sadness in later years. Like a lot of Andrew's fiction, I would say most of it, it's very closely based on his own life. But you know, he writes like an absolute dream.
I watched a few of his events in publication. So I watched his Creative Conversation event, and I watched his Edinburgh Book Festival event, and I could listen to him talk about books and writing and his work for hours and hours and hours. He's always so engaging.
Another book which came out just recently, but I haven't read yet, and it comes with quite a quite a lot of sadness, really, because we know we're not going to get much more, if anything. And it was the last of Alistair Gray's Paradise, the last in his Dante's Divine trilogy. He'd already put out Hell and Purgatory. They're fantastic. Oh, what a beautiful thing. I mean, they're all 3 of them are absolutely gorgeous. It's his take, as I say, on Dante's Divine trilogy. I was very lucky in the short period that I did some work with him, that he had just started this, and he went to me one morning in his kitchen. He says, "No, I don't want to do whatever we were supposed to be doing, which was some editing work for off me and others." He said, "Well, would you like to hear my Dante's?" And he just read for about 2 hours. It was incredible, and very Alistair Gray undertaking on this classical tale. You know, there was lots of farts and trousers falling down and things like that. You know, yeah, it's a lovely memory, and there's a lot of Alistair Gray, I should say, because we're going to talk a little bit about what's coming up in 2021. And one of the things which is a celebration of Lanark, because it's 40 years of Lanark in February. And there's going to be all sorts of celebrations next year commemorating Alistair and particularly Lanark, including, I'm hoping, a whole load of podcasts that will be coming out with various people.
What you will be doing?
Well, I can't say too much about it, but there'll be, I'll let you know when we can see it. Just keep them peeled, people.
So is 2021 going to be the year of Grey?
Hopefully it'll be the year of Grey again. Lots of things planned, which I will hope won't have to be postponed, but there'll still be lots of stuff, particularly round about I can't remember the exact date in February, but that's the date of Lanark's publication. There'll be lots of stuff happening that day and in and around it.
Yeah, I mean, my confession is that Lanark is the only Alistair Gray book that I've read, which I know is shocking. So I might make 2021 the year of grey and reread Lanark. And
well, if you're going to only read one, it's not a bad place to
yeah.
go. I'd also like to mention that this is the first publication that they put out, but it's The Common Breath. This was a Good Listeners, which was Brian Hamill, who is one of the people who runs Common Breath, and alongside Alan Warner, and it's 3 stories from each. And it's a lovely little collection, but it leads me on to talk about the good work that Common Breath are doing, and they're going to be publishing James Kelman. They're looking back to republish kind of lost cult texts.
Yeah, I've got one.
There you are, Waiting for Nothing, the Tom Cromer book. And they're going to do new collections of people work. They're working with Duncan McLean. Oh, great to have some Duncan McLean. And Brian and everyone else involved with Common Breath is just doing incredible work. The stuff they do during the week on the website, their Fiction Fridays, which I know you and myself have been involved in, where they ask people kind of questions about books and all sorts of stuff. It's an amazing undertaking. They've been a real highlight of the year, I would say.
I completely agree with you. Friday Fiction is sort of, it's like how you measure the week, really. It's like,
Yes,
Friday at the end of the week, and then you're getting on with your work, but you're just like, but I'm just going to go online and find Friday Fiction and have a wee read of what people are talking about in that. I love Friday Fiction, but I do love Common Breath as well. I think for in such a short space of time, and considering that it's a part-time project, because it's not a full-time job or anything, what they've managed to do, and not only publishing books but creating a brilliant online community for chatting about literature and chatting about art that means a lot to you. I think they're excellent. There is never a dull conversation starter that comes from the Common Breath. They just all the time, they just want to hear what people are reading, what people are thinking about. They tweet about music, they tweet about films, and everybody joins in. And so it feels like Common Breath have sort of created a community.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think it's a lot of publishers should take note of how you do that, because they've done it spectacularly well.
They're searching. It's like from Good Listeners to be working with Alan Warner straight away, to be working with James Kelman as they're doing. So they're taking these established writers, but then also encouraging brand new writers to send stuff in, or unpublished writers to send their stuff in, and bringing these people together and having no judgment about one or the other. It's like, are you want to be involved, then get involved. It's it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah,
so Kirsten, I think, is who helps him. Because Common Breath is just fantastic.
I can't wait to see what else they do, because everything that they've done so far is tip top.
A book I'd like to talk about, which won't be for everyone, but I really enjoyed it, was The Literary Politics of Scottish Devolution. Now, it's an academic book by Scott Hames, who works at University of Stirling, and it looks to how literature and the kind of formation of stuff in the 50s and 60s, and then fed into the move to the push for devolution, and perhaps the failure of devolution first time round. Lots of facts in there along with the fiction, but it's quite a heavy and hardcore. But if you're at all interested in the politics of literature and the politics of Scotland, then Scott Hames' The Literary Politics of Scottish Devolution is a good read. If you know someone who is like, that's the kind of thing they would like for Christmas, then it's perfect.
I think there will be, I really do, because it's about how they intersect and influence each other as well. So it's not just so it's interesting for those who are interested in history, politics, literature, culture, all the ways that those intersect with each other.
And it looks at the kind of history of Scottish literary magazines, going way back, when they all seem to be made within about 3 rooms in Edinburgh University. All over the country, which was quite interesting, but and all the people involved as well, and some of whom went on to be involved in publishing in a much bigger way and writing. in a much bigger way. But yeah, it's a fascinating read.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to talk about coming up in 2021 before we round off
Yes.
2020?
Yes, there is. So I have 2 books which they're only in proof form at the moment, but they are already my 2 picks for the books that I may love the most next year. And they are Jenny Fagan's Luck in Booth.
Excellent.
Finally! I think we actually thought that we might have talked about this last year.
We were looking forward to it last year, I think, yeah.
But it's coming out in January this year, and this I am so looking forward to this. Maybe before I start the Ali Smith project, I might read this one first, because the Ali Smith project might take a wee bit. So I want to get stuck into this. And the other one is this one, which is Jackie Kay writing about the life and times of Bessie Smith, the pioneering blues singer.
Yeah.
Which I only found out this week as a re-release. Seemingly this was first published way back when. Oh. But yeah, so I thought it was brand new, but it's not. But in Faber, it's Faber rather than our usual publisher, which is Picador, who are bringing this book out. And as a lover of old music in all its forms, whether it be blues, rock and roll, whatever, and Jackie Kay as well, I think this is going to be a marriage made in heaven. I mean, she did so well with Trumpet, yeah. So I'm full of anticipation for reading this one as well.
You've just reminded me, I forgot to talk about Stuart Cosgrove's Cassie.
That was a great book too.
It was great. And Stuart, if you're listening, I'm sorry we forgot, but we're mentioning it now. If you liked Stuart's trilogy, his music trilogy, then you'll love Cassius X as well, because although it's about the young Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, and that period in his time when he was getting involved with the Nation of Islam and he was running up to his fight against Sonny Liston, a lot of it's about music. And I don't know, I felt that Stuart was almost itching to write more about the music than he was maybe the boxing. Maybe that's being unfair, but I think, you know, the stuff with Sam Cooke, I would like to have known more almost about Sam.
Oh, yeah, I love Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke is one of my favourite human beings. I would like to read, just a book about Sam. I should probably investigate. There probably is books about Sam Cooke, but that is definitely a story I would like to delve deep into, because
Stuart, maybe you could write one for us if the
no. I think I'm done with the writing. I think my poor brain needs a rest.
Sam Cooke 101.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure I'm the one to write that book, but I would definitely read it if it came out.
Well, Vikki, thanks so much for talking to us, not just today, but also on the previous podcast. And I hope that everyone at home will have found something of interest to them. We tried hard to give you something that'll interest you.
We're very sorry that we went on and on, but we were just so excited by all these books. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, so excited we couldn't squeeze it into one podcast. We had to split it into two. So Vikki, you take care, and I'll hopefully see you soon.
You too, yes.
And we'll be back soon with, I think, the best films of the year. Cheers.